The Pirates dropped the season opener 5-4 to the Marlins in all too familiar fashion. Paul Skeens was decent, Nicky G got dinged up, Holderman and Bednar got lit up. And that's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Pirates your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Paul Skeens. He was very good. Still not finding ways to shorten at bats, though. Got himself into a lot of trouble, extended at bats with guys, walked a few, couldn't put guys away today. Almost felt like the Marlins weren't able to put their bats on hardly anything, but they were able to squib their way around the baseball field, hit the ball to the right people like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. We'll get into that later. and ultimately just kind of walk their way into getting something done against Paul Skeens, keeping a little bit of a sliver of the bat on things long enough to make him go 8-9 pitches deep on a routine strikeout at bat. He did have 7 of those. It's not like he pitched bad. He'll get better as the season goes on and he stretches out more and he gets more familiar with a couple of these new pitches he's trying to introduce. There has to be something done, though, about getting some contact a little bit earlier. I don't know if you listened to the pregame at all on Pittsburgh Sportsnet, but Stephen Brault brought up an interesting point with Paul Skeens, and it's almost that his stuff is so good that he has a really hard time getting any kind of contact, which makes at-bats inevitably go a little bit longer than they should. You know, you talk about a strikeout, you're typically looking at 5-6 pitches for a strikeout, whereas somebody that hunts contact or is able to get weak contact, a lot of the time they can kind of knock that sequence out in 3 pitches, and it changes things for you when you're able to do that. You get deeper into games that way. Paul Skeens is always going to struggle to see the 7th or 8th inning if he doesn't change this aspect of his game. It's wonderful what he does. The strikeouts are incredible. He's a virtuoso with the baseball. He can do almost anything he wants with it. But he's got to add that trick to his bag. You got to add some kind of a pitch that induces contact. And when he did get contact, he didn't get a lot of help. You know, weak ground balls, you know, to the right of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa were not his friend. You know, I'm not saying that it was an easy play and any shortstop should have made it, but a major league shortstop makes that play most of the time. Turning double plays seems to be a challenge. Again, I hate to pick on the guy, but IKF is pretty slow with the ball to second base. And it causes Nick Gonzalez to have to make some awkward turns, some late turns with the ball, and they're missing opportunities to get those double plays that sometimes are the big difference in whether you get out of an inning or not. I mean, it's not always the umpire. Somebody should tell Colin Holderman that. Again, we'll talk more about the bullpen as we go. Paul Skeens, though, all in all, this is exactly what you want to see from him. Now, when Paul Skeens gives you a decent outing, over 5 innings and under 3 runs, let's call that a decent outing. You expect, if your winning formula is your starting pitchers are awesome, that you find a way to win when your team puts up 4 runs, right? This team, in order for them to do anything this year, 4 runs has to be a win. If 4 runs isn't a win most of the time, they're not going anywhere. That's the entire premise of what this team is built on. Minimize runs, prevent runs, and then score just enough to win the game. 4 runs is right in that territory. Whoever wrote that script wasn't thinking 2 runs. They weren't thinking 8. They were thinking 4. Like that's right above the average run total for wins. That's what this team needed to do. Just be average. An average offense should be able to win in this league with this kind of pitching. Paul Skeens gave you that kind of pitching. They handed it off to a bullpen that, as we'll talk about in the next segment, has become inverted. I almost have more faith in anybody not in the setup and closing roles as I do the actual back end guys. And that's scary. Let's talk a little bit more about what I did like from Paul tonight. There was some obvious control issues. He is struggling with that 2-seamer a little bit. He's losing it arm side. He was in spring too. It's a new pitch for him. I expect him to figure it out. But he does seem to be losing the handle on it a little bit. It's mostly there for left-handed pitchers. He felt like he needed something else that could kind of go the opposite direction. I can understand that. If you were somebody that could do just about anything you want to do, you'd want the perfect mix too. And that was really the only thing missing from his repertoire. So having a pitch that can kind of go that other direction is cool. But he put so much spin on the ball that he is just losing it arm side over and over and over again, throwing it to these lefties, and they're just standing back taking it. Paul Skeens too good of a pitcher to be walking guys like that frequently, or even threatening to walk guys just trying to tone it in. So that pitch needs to get dialed in pretty quickly, and he needs to start finding a way to find contact. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a sinker. Maybe it's a cutter instead of a slider, something a little bit less devastating than you typically throw up there. Maybe you need to start putting the 4-seamer at the bottom of the zone. Let people touch it. You know, he's going to have to come up with something, because there are outings in which Paul Skeens would be better off getting to the 7th or 8th inning, having given up a solo home run because somebody caught up to something, as opposed to getting to the 5th inning, having the other team being no hit. Because eventually you've got to hand it off to this bullpen. I don't know what else to say about the bullpen. Everything they could have done just about fell apart tonight. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On, and as the Pirates' regular season is coming up, I can count on them to help grab tickets that meet my needs. In fact, my favorite time to use it is when I'm traveling. I just used it last year when I went to a San Francisco Giants game in San Francisco. It was a last-minute idea, and lo and behold, I got some nice, really affordable tickets and a great seat at a ballpark I wasn't all that familiar with before. So really, really good service. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. We're going to talk about the bullpen, but first, please smash that subscribe button. I need you to do it. We got to get these subscribes up. I would like to see a little bit more of those. And give me some comments down here under the YouTubes. I love to try to respond to them. It's really, I think it helps me make the show better by seeing what you are picking up on that I didn't lay down in the first place. I love it. Make sure you interact with me as much as you can. I really do try to keep up on that, and it keeps the show fresh. Now, the bullpen. Dennis Santana looked really, really good all spring. Dennis Santana came in to try to clean up a little bit of a mess that started to form under Paul Skeens when Derek Shelton let him try to achieve finishing the sixth inning. Couple things there. First, was it smart for Derek Shelton to send him back out for a sixth inning? I was talking earlier about some of the things Paul needs to do and how he was laboring a little bit to get through at bats. Well, his pitch count was manageable. He was under 100, but he was also up around 80 when the sixth inning started. First game out of the chute, maybe you don't want to do that with Paul Skeens. I'm not 100% sure where I fall on that. Paul's a guy that had a pretty clear outline in his head of how many innings he wanted to try to lay down this year. I could tell you his goal of 240 will never happen unless he completely changes an awful lot about what he does. You cannot be a 200 strikeout pitcher and not in this day and age anyway, because they'll never give you the pitch count to pull it off. He'll never get 240 innings because he'd have to go 7 or 8 in an awful lot of games. And right now, 7 or 8 for Paul Skeens is a stretch. I'm not sure how I even see that happening. Like, there's literally something he's going to have to physically change the way he's doing in order to start getting a little bit more weak contact on things. That could be a metamorphosis that takes this entire season for him to learn. And in the meantime, we just have, oh no, this super great pitcher that's going 6 innings most nights, and we're calling it awesome because it is. It's nitpicking a superstar, but in order for him to achieve that kind of inning load, that's what he's going to have to do. All that to say, I understand why Shelton would have wanted to let him try to go out and pitch the 6th inning. Plus, how can he feel super confident about the bullpen, right? So he went to one of his horses, one of his best horses, Dennis Santana. What does Dennis Santana do? Oh, just comes in and walks a couple guys and makes it worse. Ends up getting pulled out. Ryan Barucki comes in. They end up giving up a run that's credited to Paul Skeens there in the inning, but Barucki did his job. He got the out. End of the inning. Caleb Ferguson, clean inning. Beautiful thing. Needed it so badly. I couldn't even believe it. Then Colin Holderman comes in. And this is where we talk about the inverted bullpen. Here we are, the back end of the bullpen. And 2 guys I probably trust the least based on the way they had finished last season, and David Bednar and Colin Holderman. And that's what we had set up to hold a 2-run lead to close this game out in the last 2 innings. Colin Holderman walked the first guy he faced. Man, you just knew it was trouble right then. Then he makes a great pitch. And I mean a great pitch. Beautiful slider outside of the plate. I mean, I'm talking 6 inches off the plate. Batter reaches out with like one hand and just fists it out into right field, drops, scores the run, scores the walk, right? On that throw, O'Neal Cruz throws it all the way from center field to home and lets that bloop hit turn into a double. Gross, right? Somewhat Colin Holderman's fault. You walked the guy. You don't walk the first guy you face coming out of the bullpen. How often do you see that just smack you in the face? Well, that's exactly what happened tonight. Colin Holderman got smacked in the face. He ends up giving up another little blooper. And I mean, like, really, it wasn't a hard hit. Scores another run. A run that probably wouldn't have scored if O'Neal Cruz hadn't thrown home. Then walks another guy. and finally gets out of the inning. It was a bad inning. Game was tied. Head to the ninth, David Bednar in charge of just keeping it where it is. Couldn't do it. First hit is a ringing double that O'Neal Cruz misjudges. Goes over his head all the way to the wall. Bounces past him. He looks kind of silly. The outfield did a great job of backing him up and getting the ball in, but it was too late. A catcher had earned himself a triple. And once that guy standing at third base with nobody out, it was pretty inevitable what was going to happen. They intentionally walk a guy, and then a double down the line. Game over. David Bednar loses the game. No decision for Paul Skeens. Bullpen looks like a minefield of wreckage. One game. That's how it could go sometimes. But when it's how it was going last season with some of these same players, that's when it gets really frustrating for fans, right? This is like the exact worst case scenario we could have seen for how this would play out. And I don't know exactly what they could do about it, aside from maybe actually physically inverting some of this bullpen. If they're going to act like they can't be relied upon, well, maybe we start using other guys. Like the closer role, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. Use Ryan Barecki back there. Use Caleb Ferguson back there. Use Dennis Santana back there. Let's see what happens. How could it be worse? Let David Bednar and Colin Holderman get their mojo back. Hey, use one of David's options. Like, do something. Don't let the yips in the back end of the bullpen destroy this season before it has a chance to get its legs under it. Really. That it's that kind of dire from one game. David Bednar has been getting lit up like a downtown Christmas tree all spring long. And now he's carried it into the regular season. A regular season in which we already said he should have a short leash, right? Pirates are going to have some really, really tough decisions to make here really soon. We're going to take another break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Nick Gonzalez potentially being injured, what the Pirates can do about that, and really what we thought about the defense tonight in general. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. Setting up a lineup takes less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Bad news on the injury front here a little bit. Nick Gonzalez did something to his ankle. I'm not sure exactly where to take this yet. I don't believe there's been an official diagnosis. Maybe there will be one from the time I record to the time you see, but the Pirates classified it as a recurring ankle injury for Nick Gonzalez. Now, I don't know if that means like it was bugging him tonight at one point and then it started bugging him again, but it seemed to really crop up right after he hit a home run, a 2-run shot to left field on a pitch way inside. I was impressed he got his hands in there actually and kept the ball fair. Hit a nice 2-run shot, an important 2-run shot, And as he's trotting around the bases, he came up lame, started limping a little bit, almost went straight down the tunnel when he got into the dugout. So something was off there. Adam Frazier came in and finished the game. So Nick Gonzalez is classified as day-to-day. We don't know what that's going to mean. So what could they do if this is a long-term injury? Like if he goes on the IL, you have to figure, okay, they have Adam Frazier there. That's fine. He can play there. They have Jared Triolo who can play there a little bit. But if he goes on the IL, you're going to want somebody to come up. Now, who would that be? Would that be somebody that you're okay with, like just sitting on the bench and you just go ahead and start Triolo and Frazier? Or would the Pirates be so bold as to go ahead and make now Nick York time? You know, do you take advantage of the opportunity that is presented by having one second baseman go down and bring up another one that you sent down largely because you wanted to make sure that he got a volume of at bats? Well, why not bring him up and get them here if that's what happens? Nick York is an interesting guy that could make it a difference up here, and it would be a cool time to get him up here. And if it works out well enough, you know, and he has bat proved something you want to keep up here, well, you have first base that's still going to need a right-handed option. There might yet be another reason to keep him here. You probably need another right-handed option in the outfield. There might yet be a reason to keep him here. So we could see some roster changes coming pretty quick if this injury goes a certain kind of way for Nick Gonzalez. Now, I hope not, because, again, Nick really put a nice swing on that ball, and this lineup is just so starved for any kind of spark of offense. I am loath to give it up free. I really don't want to see Nick Gonzalez go anywhere. Let's really hope that he's okay, but that's the kind of turn on a dime change that this entire roster could go through. I really didn't think about Nick Gonzalez getting hurt, but then I kind of thought to myself about how often he's been hurt on his trip up here, and even last year he spent some time on the IL. So maybe he's getting a little bit of a reputation of somebody that kind of can't stay on the field too. You kind of hate to have a lot of those. Brian Hayes looked really good in the opening game. He was still keeping that same approach, went to right field, played really solid defense. Probably the only person I can say honestly did. Joey Bart struggled behind the plate a little bit, I thought. I wouldn't say it was glaring. A couple balls got past him that probably shouldn't have. I think he does fine framing. It's hit or miss as to whether they're calling a good game or not anymore, because they let so many players call their own games. So I have no idea whether he's doing a good job with that or not. I thought he had a really good timed, settled down moment with Colin Holderman there in the 8th inning that kind of got him back on track, to the point where, honestly, he should have gotten out of the inning. He had thrown strike 3. It was beyond a shadow of a doubt strike 3 too. I mean, boy, if we had that ABS, he'd have been out of that inning, and we might be talking a completely different story here about how opening day went. O'Neal Cruz in the outfield is going to be a little bit of an experience, it looks like. I don't know, man. The path to the ball is funny. He looks like he's having a hard time tracking it at times. I will give him a little bit of credit that the sky gets real big in Miami. Florida in general, you can lose balls pretty easy in that sky. And that takes a little bit of an experience to kind of figure out. Playing bounces off the walls isn't easy for everybody. I understand that aspect too. But knowing when to throw where at the right time, that's on the coaching to make sure he knows that stuff. Like, he shouldn't be making errors like that. He should know what he's doing with that ball before he even catches it. That's not something that he should be deciding in the moment. That's something that gets drilled into your head. I'm hitting the cutoff man here. Why? Because that second run matters. The first one doesn't. You know, like, those are things that you have to have him understand on his own and catch on to pretty quick. He didn't. That's a problem. I think they're going to have to work with him a little bit more out there. They've got to clean up his game a little bit. And he doesn't have a lot of help on the wings. Brian Reynolds is a responsible outfielder. He will cover for him. He'll help him back up. He covers his own amount of territory. He does fine. Tommy Pham is not like that. Tommy Pham is not a good outfielder. He does not cover an awful lot of ground. And they have him playing the bigger of the two in left field. So there's going to be some issues there, I think, that we're going to have to play through. I'm nowhere near ready to give up on Arno Cruz as a center fielder. I think the talent's there. I would just like to see them work with him a little bit more and make some of those decisions second nature as opposed to something he has to think about or ingest. That's going to be a problem for as long as this goes on. I wish that a lot more of that had happened in spring, but it felt like they were afraid to let him do it. The other thing I wanted to say is even though they scored 4 runs, and I said that's enough and they should score 4 runs and they should be able to win with that. Okay, but I think there's other things they can do to make this lineup a little bit better. Like, you can play either Ji-Hwan Bae or Jack Sawinski minimally. Just get one of them in there against a right-handed pitcher. You know, we went in against Sandy Alcantara with 2 switch hitters and a lefty. I would have liked to have seen one more in there just to kind of break it up a little bit. He's definitely got enough to get righties out. He's got the kind of stuff that righties have a hard time with. I would have just liked to have seen another lefty thrown into the lineup. Against this pitcher, he's really the biggest threat the Marlins have. So, I don't know. Nitpicky stuff. All in all, the offense did enough against a really tough pitcher. The bullpen let the team down. And that's how the opening day went. Let's hope that the rest of the series goes better because this is arguably the worst team in the National League. Not the Pirates, the Marlins. I should probably be clear about that. And you got to come out of it with a 3-1 record at this point. You really do. Going to Tampa right after, they're a team that's probably not going to threaten the AL East, but they're never a slouch. This team's got to button some things up and quick, which you kind of hope they would have taken care of in spring training. No, I mean, like that's what you'd hope for. Thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On MLB season previews, every contender, every division, everything you need to know. Find all 6 episodes on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's all I got today. Thank you for listening. Stay locked.